You don't have time to just hang out 8 hours a day for 3 months with someone, getting to know what makes them tick. If I want to get a quick and accurate read, that is super important. So I've done a cajillion different profiles. There's only literally a handful that I have curated and actually promote, Kolbe being number one. So I think it gives you a really accurate read really, really quickly so that you can actually determine, is this person a right fit for the role? Is the role a right fit for them?
Welcome to Powered by Instinct, a podcast for professionals who think about how your fundamental nature drives performance. If you're interested in getting more done more naturally, then let's jump in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Powered by Instinct. I'm Amy Bruske, President and Integrator at Kolbe Corp., and I'm so excited about today's topic, which is about how to grow businesses and how to do that in a way where you're using assessments successfully. So we have a lot of stories about how people are using Kolbe successfully, but today I really want to round that out and talk about why use assessments, what type of assessments people are using, and how to do that in a seamless way. Now, in season 2, we interviewed Dan Sullivan, who is the co-founder of Strategic Coach. And now we are thrilled to welcome our entrepreneurial team strategist for Strategic Coach, Shannon Waller. Now, our guest today, the brilliant Shannon Waller, is the author of my favorite book for team members, so I want to talk about that later. She is trained in multiple assessments, and not only has she used them successfully in her own company, she coaches other people on how to apply them to help with the most challenging people problems. So that's what I'm excited about because I have learned so much from her. I know you're going to too. So Shannon Waller, welcome.
Oh my gosh, Amy, I am so thrilled to be here. You're one of my very favorite people, as you know, both as a colleague and a friend, as my, teacher. I'm also your coach. You're my coach. So I just love all the different connections that we have. And this is one of my very favorite topics. So extra thrilled to be here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. So everyone, quick background on Strategic Coach, and then we'll talk about them a little bit more later. This organization is really kind of the worldwide leader in entrepreneurial coaching. It's run by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. Yeah. Shannon, what's the really short description of Coach for you? How do you guys change lives?
Oh my gosh, this is a great question. Hard to do in a short answer. I've been with the company since 1991, but I've also been in the program for that long. And I think we are just really the premier entrepreneurial coaching framework, set of mindsets and community that any entrepreneur who really truly wants to grow, wants to transform, and do it in the way that is the healthiest and the best for them and their family, coaches it. Our clients are the best. They're just incredible. Our coaches are all clients too. There's no talking heads. Right. They're people who actually have embodied this for themselves. And the coaching mindsets, the tools that we have to help people make their progress are amazing. And they're fast and they're simple and they're designed for certain MOs, which is really great. So if people want a self-managing, self-multiplying company, and if they've explored other things, coach is often where they come to go, oh, now I can really make that next big jump.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you said is caring about what's happening at work and your home life. I think that's huge because it is hard to be a leader of any type, and especially if you own or are running a growing business. So, and I've been in the program for over 20 years. I don't remember ever the exact number, but Shannon has been my coach for a long time too. So for all of you, my Kolbe result is 3583. Shannon's MO is 3295. And Shannon, we're going to talk a little bit more about your Kolbe strengths in a little bit. But first, as a good setup for today, let me cover just a basic concept to help make sure that we're all on the same page. For anyone who's new, I want to make sure that you understand the concept of the 3 parts of the mind. Yes. And that is that everyone operates in these 3 dimensions of the mind, and you have strengths in all 3. So cognitive, or the thinking part of the mind, being what do you know, your skills, your experience, those kinds of things. Affective, or what's called personality traits, oftentimes, or the feeling part of the mind, is what do you want, what do you desire, what are your values, motivations, and maybe very importantly for taking action is what do you prefer to do. And then this last part of the mind is the cognitive part of the mind, which is how do you take action. So that's the doing part. And Kolbe is the only assessment that measures this doing part of the mind. So when we start talking about other assessments in play, just know that Kolbe is this: how do you execute? How do you solve problems? How do you just take action if you are striving and if you're completely free to be yourself? So these are your problem-solving, decision-making strengths is what I've been saying recently that resonates with people. All right, so with that foundation, Shannon, Here's the deal. Let's start super basic. Why should anyone in a leadership position, even individuals, why assessments at all? What's the value in using them?
Oh my gosh. I think the number one value for me is to be able to get a read on people quickly. Business is moving fast. You don't have time to just hang out 8 hours a day for 3 months with someone, getting to know what makes them tick. And I'm a big shortcut fan, also indicated by my MO. But if I want to get a quick and accurate read, that is super important. So I've done a cajillion different profiles. There's only literally a handful that I have curated and actually promote, Kolbe being number one. So I think it gives you a really accurate read really, really quickly so that you can actually determine, is this person a right fit for the role? Is the role a right fit for them? Hopefully, as a leader, you care about that. And since you want to harness people's strengths, because trying to manage people for whom this is not a strength, cognitive, affective, or cognitive, that's a lot of bloody work. Why would you want to take that on? That just makes no sense. So if you want to, as Dan Sullivan likes to say, ride the horse in the direction it's already going, how are you going to find out the direction that it wants to be going in? And assessments, to my mind, fastest, easiest way. And I do get some pushback sometimes by people saying, oh, I don't want to be boxed in, or it's like, oh, it's not that. It simply gives you language and gives you words that are consistent amongst the testing population. So you have a way to talk about your strengths, your passions, your capabilities. I love your definition of Kolbe. And the other one that is really meaningful for me is this is how your mental energy plays out. Like you can be smart, but if you have no mental energy for fact finding and you pass out in the library, that'd be me. I'm an excellent reader, just fall asleep in libraries. Then this will help you understand why. And that is critical for a leader to know. You have to know all those three aspects of someone. And I don't know if you're not doing profiles, you are doing it the long, hard way.
Yeah, it could take you years to figure something out about someone sometimes that an assessment can help pinpoint for you right away. But one of the things that you said that really struck me is that it gives you this common language, and that's true too. So it's going to shortcut it for you as a leader. It gives you insights right away. It gets you there faster. But that individual also has knowledge to help them self-manage, use words. You know, we say people have to get very good at describing what you need and how you need to take action. And so this gives you some language to describe your strengths, but also, you know, observe and self-manage more effectively. And then a shortcut for the team, it helps. Certainly when we know we are using Kolbe, there's this shortcut that happens with team members when you're working on a project and trying to solve problems together with that too.
Yeah, you've used the term self-managed. And I think that is, I mean, we have a term called something everyone aspires to is having a self-managing company. You can't have a self-managing company unless the people in it are self-managing. And I think that gets overlooked. And certainly as we're completely shifting from most companies, from a big hierarchy to much more of a network team, you need self-managing people who know their strengths, know their non-strengths, are very clear about, oh, hey, I need help over here. I've got this. You know, that's the world we're working in. And technology is increasing. The number of people available to us to hire is decreasing.
Right.
You know, population's not actually expanding. So we have to get really savvy. And so to have self-managing people is key. And one of my personal rules is know thyself, right? And these assessments give, as we were talking about language, to help people do that effectively, quickly, accurately, as opposed to any other kind of pretense you could put on it.
Sure. And you said something about boxing people in, and I think that's critical. So thank you for bringing that up. Assessments should not be slapping a label on you, because here's the deal. You are not that result, whatever assessment you're using, at all times. So it should be some helpful information, interesting, use it when you need it, but it is not meant to box you in and explain your behavior at all times. And if you hear that from an assessment, I say run. This is not useful. If they're going to tell you that all of your behavior is explained in one assessment, then that is absolutely incorrect. So this is not meant to box you in. It's not meant to be a label, but also I'm going to say it is not meant to be a cop-out on getting things done. We talk about that a lot with Kolbe is just because you don't naturally, so Shannon, your example of the library is great. Just because you don't naturally dig into the details doesn't mean that if you have to look at a contract, you have to get in there and you have to cover all those details. Or as I say in the US, the IRS is not okay with the fact that I'm a 3 in fact finder. I don't get to say, I'm sorry, close enough. That's not a thing. So I don't love when people embrace it so much that it goes the other end and it's a cop out. So I think we'll talk about a few pitfalls here in a minute. But okay, so that's why assessments at all. Why multiple assessments? What value have you found in doing more than one?
Well, it 100% goes back to the three parts of the mind. If you're doing just one assessment, you're only having one dimension. I mean, human beings are incredibly complex and multidimensional. Another reason why you can't really be boxed in. But however, illuminating, facets of yourself, that is incredibly helpful. So if you only do one assessment, and I know some people are like, oh, well, I always do this. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't measure the cognitive. It's a both and, it's not an either or. So I actually look for, in head, heart, gut, head, heart, hands, however you want to describe it. We've always done Kolbe. I'm proud to say I was the first one to bring Kolbe into Strategic Coach. Partly because I was coaching clients, it was assistants at that time who have very different MOs than I do. And I have a personal rule, I will not coach anyone without knowing their Kolbe. But that's only one aspect of someone. Indicators about your affect. What are your preferences, as you said? What are your passions? What are your values? What do you lean into? What are you going to apply your talents to? And actually, I had the chance to have Kathy on my podcast, which is Dreamy. And she talked about the importance of the affect. And I realized it's the spark. Without that spark, nothing else happens. You're not striving if you don't care. And then intellect also matters. And to me, this is funny because we've always done Kolbe. We've added, a couple of personality assessments as well. And then if the personality assessment and the Kolbe fit is right for the role, but the person's still not working out, there's only one thing left. And that is mental horsepower. And that's their cognitive capability. And that was actually the case. So then we actually added in, at the time it was Wonderlic, because I just realized we really needed a cognitive assessment as well. We're a fast-paced, fast-moving company that serves entrepreneurs, all of whom are really smart. So if that's not you, then we're probably not a great fit for you. So I think that the reason to have multiple assessments, and sometimes even in the affect, there's a cajillion, and figuring out the 2 to 3 that are the most strategic for you, it's gold.
That's great. And I guess you mentioned a couple you're using right now. What are your favorite assessments? Like, which are the assessments that you're finding the most value? And what are you guys using? And how do they complement each other?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So number one is Kolbe. And it's kind of fun. We actually, obviously, when we're hiring for a role, we know what the Kolbe right fit is. We know the Kolbe C. We have the range of success. So we know the Kolbe range that we're looking for, and we update it. That's also key. The next one that I would say that's most important in terms of getting to know someone is actually their CliftonStrengths. So that is fabulous to get their, do they have relationships, strategic thinking, influencing, or executing strengths? That's super helpful to know. We have another affective profile, which is available to Friends of Coach, which is called the Print profile, which is amazing. We pretty much do that once we've hired someone too, because it's not an over-the-counter profile. It helps to have someone who can help interpret it for you, but that measures your unconscious motivators. It is amazing. And that has been really instrumental in helping us understand one another. And then Wonderlic, as I mentioned, for cognitive. Now, the other one I'm having a ton of fun with is Working Genius. And I like how Patrick Lencioni in the Table Group describes it. It's 20% a personality profile and 80% a productivity tool. Because it tells people where in the creative process, not the 3 parts of the mind, but the creative process, are you passionate about? And then how you take action on that is your Kolbe, your personality, all the things. So it's the only teamwork tool I've ever found. And as a teamwork nerd, I'm having a ton of fun with it. And then we also do Myers-Briggs, but the ones we really rely on are really Kolbe, Working Genius, Print, and CliftonStrengths.
As you went through that whole list, every time you mentioned one of the assessments, I'm thinking to myself, here's what I got out of that one. Here's what I got out of that one. I took Myers-Briggs so long ago, and every once in a while people will say, it's so simple, but I'll say, knowing I'm an introvert was life-changing for me. Because my husband, Jim, calls me antisocial because he needs to be around people all the time. Don't get me started on how we had a holiday party, and after the party, people went to karaoke, and I said, I'm going home. And he asked me, hey, do you mind if I go to karaoke with everyone? So here's my husband with our whole team at karaoke, and I went home and went to bed. So knowing that about myself, though, allowed me to get rid of the guilt about and understand that recharging is actually very strategic for me. That's not something that I have to feel badly about. And I love being around people. I love talking to people, getting information. but I also need that other end. Now, when you use so many different assessments, so all of them have a little bit of insight, can you give us an example on how some of them work together?
The story that I've been telling recently, and I just coached our whole team on Working Genius, which was really, really fun. So Babs and I are kind of profile twins. Okay. So she's 3392. That's her MO. I'm 3295. So we're in the same, almost the same zones in most of them. So we're very, very similar. We have exactly the same motivational imprint, which is we both love to enjoy life and be happy and to be strong and self-reliant. That's print. We have very similar CliftonStrengths. So in our top 10, it's probably 60, 70% match, which is kind of wild. But sometimes we would still rub. And then Working Genius was actually what illuminated that. Babs and I have been friends since I joined Coach. I'm your strategic thinking partner, like all the things, but occasionally be like this. So in Working Genius, and I'll just quickly say the 6: wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, tenacity. So 30,000 feet, wonder, all the way to tenacity, getting this sucker across the finish line. So it turns out that I'm invention, discernment, stages 2 and 3. She is invention, galvanizing. So she has a new idea and she's motivating other people to take action on it. And I have to tell you, it is unbelievable what this woman can pull off with people. Like, she galvanized our sales team in the summer, and we had the highest summer results for the summer we've ever had. If I can see an obstacle, a roadblock, I used to think it was my CliftonStrengths strategic, but it's discernment. You have to put stock in the assessments to take these seriously. If you don't take it seriously, that information is useless. And you have to trust the other person to go, oh, I don't want to slow down, but I will. And yet when there's galvanizing, I'm like, here you go. Please take action on this with the team. Right? So it's that interplay, but it kind of answered a question that I've had forever about why, like, when we're so similar, and this fellow was like, oh, I get it. This is the difference. So again, it gave language to an experience I was already having. And that's, again, the thing about tools. They're giving language to what you already know, right? Your own living. But you're like, oh, finally I have words for it. So that's my most recent example.
It's such a great example, too, of how at what point in the process of putting together a project or whatever you're working on, do you need to step up versus Babs step up, as you're saying. If you know you have someone that's galvanizing and a great cheerleader and can sell anybody on anything, on taking action, let's have that, but not until you've done a little bit of discernment around which of these things make sense and how can I be strategic about how to take action. So to clarify for everybody, with the affect, if you just keep thinking about it, as you were saying earlier, Shannon, is what is the spark? What is the motivation to take action on? So when it comes to something needs discernment, Shannon's energy is all of a sudden going to get engaged. And then the way that she executes on that is her 3295 Kolbe result. And so there's so much richness in when you step back and say, why do I do this? Or the questions I ask myself a lot that I'm still learning every single day, if not certainly every week, is why does this one thing frustrate me? Or why am I procrastinating this one thing? It's not hard for me to do. Or any of those kinds of questions where you're trying to be more productive, you're trying to, always up-leveling performance, but understanding the combination of those things is it's back to the 3 parts of the mind. And when it comes to 2 people, as you just described, that part is fascinating when 2 people have similar Kolbe results, but appear very different to all of us as we're working on teams. And a lot of you already are using Kolbe all the time who are listening. So you see this behavior, but it looks different on the surface. That's almost always this, what we call an affective overlay, kind of this overlay on top of that. So I love that example. Thank you. So those different assessments have different parts and different uses, as we said. What do you say to people who say it gets a little confusing to use, when do I use what? Because I can't just, Shannon and I, everyone dabble in all kinds of assessments because this is not only my job, but my hobby, which is fun for me. But entrepreneurs could go a little bit overboard on this. It's my favorite tool this time, or they're rolling things out with their teams. It's getting confusing. What advice do you have for that?
Several. One of the things is one at a time. If you present all of them all at once, people will get confused. I mean, you and I have been doing this forever and a day. So it's second nature to me. Like, I actually sometimes, I remember I was trying to coach people on DISC. That's another one that we do and have done quite a few now. And it makes so much sense to me. For a whole bunch of our team, it didn't make sense. So one at a time. So if you're coaching your team on Kolbe, get some Kolbe coaching, on how best to do that. Make sure they really understand the part of the mind that Kolbe is addressing, which is the conative, the taking action, mental energy, that sort of thing, problem solving. And then if it's the affective, is it what people see from a personality standpoint, for example, with CliftonStrengths, or is it their deeper motivations, which is print, just to really separate them out. And then we actually do, after people have gotten really familiar with stuff, then we actually start to put it together, which is, okay, take your top strengths from 3 or 4 different profiles, however many, or 2, and just pay attention to how does this play out in your life. When you're the coach of the baseball team for your kid, or if you are leading a project at work, or if you're the technical specialist, how does your Clifton strength of analytical work with your 8 fact finder? Like, you can start to something, you're like, oh, both of those things really line up. Or if you're, the opposite can be true. You're analytical, but you're 3 fact finder. What does that look like? It's different. Right. And if you're at all interested in learning about yourself, these are just fun tools to have to be able to do that. So one at a time, first of all, please have someone who's knowledgeable and confident and can answer questions like, is this valid? Is this reliable? Get some good coaching. And then eventually you can pull it together from a strength standpoint, because all the profiles, if they're any good, help you identify what are your strengths in this area. And then people can start to put it together. Ultimately, it's a big contributor in strategic coaches process called unique ability. And when you can start to describe what you do and the why you do it, then you kind of know why you're here, and what the impact is that you want to have, and you have a way of articulating it. So that's really fun. That's kind of the advanced version. But ultimately, they all play together to help you show up as your very best contributing self and happiest person. So that's kind of a few of the steps.
Go ahead and give us a little bit more on unique ability, because I do think that conversation with any kind of leader and individual, every individual needs to understand more about their unique ability, but how do you use that? Because it's quite comprehensive, as you said, but how is that play out in how you coach people?
One of the aspirations we have for all of our clients and for our team is that they spend as much time as possible in their area of what we call unique ability. And the bigger context of that is we categorize it into 4 different types of abilities, starting from the outside, going in. So there are things that we are not put on the planet to do. You put in the time and effort, you do not get the result. We call these incompetent. Most people hate that label because they're like, I mustn't be very good. No, frankly, there's certain things that some of us were not put here to do. So there's incompetent, then there's things we're competent at. These are things we're okay, reach minimum standard, but so do a lot of other people. So there's competition. As I like to say, I'd rather just win. Then there's excellent. Now we're getting into the fun part. Excellent is where you have superior skill, you get great teamwork, great reputation, but it's a little bit like been there, done there, got way too many t-shirts. And so it's not burnout, but it's brownout. So it's just not challenging, could be at all or anymore. And then finally, the smallest circle in the center is where you have superior skill and passion. You love it. Your eyes light up. You're so excited. And then this is also where you have the biggest impact. You're a hero, as Dan Sullivan likes to say. And it gives you energy. So at the end of the day, you might be physically tired, but after coaching, as you know, I'm like lit up from the inside. I'm just so thrilled to be able to do what I do. And then, but you can also always see room to get better. So that's never-ending improvement, which some people flip to go, oh, then I mustn't be very good. No, the only reason why you can see possibilities for never-ending improvement is because you are superb and love it. So that's unique ability. But if you're going to do your unique ability, you need to be surrounded by other people who are unique at everything you're not. And that's what we call unique ability teamwork, which is why the whole team needs to, it's just for you to know you. It's nice. But if I'm a 3295, this is why I have a full-time person who does nothing but schedule me, and her Kolbe MO is 6733. Right. And she's my support partner. She's not just my EA, she's my partner because I need her, right? And so and I stay on my sideline and she stays on her sideline. It's perfect. But I'm not going to be that astute or that confident or stay on my side of the line unless I'm that clear on my unique ability and other people's.
That's right. And I remember when I did the exercise with unique ability very early on in the program. And the question was, what % of your time are you in your unique ability right now? Man, that was not fun. No. Because when I really sat and looked at it, I thought, I don't even remember what I put down, maybe 30% or something, or 40%. And your challenge was, how can you increase that just a little bit? And so I bring that up when we're talking about assessments to say, if you can look at your alignment in a role in all of those areas that you just described, and then slowly but surely say, what does 10% more look like? What is increasing the amount of time that you're in those unique ability activities? It is life-changing. But you have to be very aware of it and diligent. And I do think that assessments help us really see the full view of who you are. Okay, so any cautionary tales that you have around assessments gone wrong, or anything you want to warn us about before we move on? You might have some good client examples. I know for me, sometimes people who just get their Kolbe result and they think it's the best thing that it's ever happened because it finally explains their stress. But then, they may go too far with what what a great tool can go too far, or the way you're implementing it in your business or for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, Kolbe really is the best thing since sliced bread. It's not the only part of the picture. It's like thinking that everything is only striving. It's like, well, what about your brain and what about your heart? You have to appreciate those parts too and how they all work together. So I think that kind of blindness is a good one. The other one, and this actually is something that Kolbe highlighted, is that using the assessments to either not hire or fire people. First of all, there's legal and not legal ways to use profiles. So let's make sure you're doing it fairly and equitably across all your constituents, all that sort of thing. So that's one thing. But also just recognizing that there never should be used to punish. So that's one. Also, a lot of times people think they want to hire a clone. You probably don't. You probably want someone who's complementary to you. Now, one exception to that is some high-level fact finder follow-throughs who actually do need a mini-me. And they're not going to trust anyone unless they're very similar. So there's that. So those are some of the things that I'm aware of. And then using profiles that are not validated. I think that's another one. I mean, frankly, I love what Avenger are you? One of my favorite ones. Definitely want to be Black Widow. It has no validity here. Right. It's really important to, if you are going to set your life or your focus and your time and attention by profile, please make sure it's a really legit one. I think that's the part of it that I see people go a little cray to.
Yeah, the validity. Yes, please ask good questions. If you are thinking of using any other assessment, you have to go look at, is it valid? Is it reliable? But also, has it been validated for what you want to use it for? So I see people all the time trying to use personality type tests or affective tests in the hiring process. And the distributors of that assessment will tell you, do not use this in hiring. For example, Myers-Briggs will say, this is not meant to be a hiring, use it once you've hired someone, but you can't use it in the hiring process. So be careful on those kinds of things, certainly. Yes, and don't assign all behavior to this. You mentioned hiring your clone, and I think that one's interesting. So everyone, we all have to admit that we are human, and human nature is such that we are attracted to people who are just like us. You then get assessments and you realize, oh, gosh, I got my Kolbe assessment. I actually need people who are different than I am. And I've seen entrepreneurs go completely the other way. So where before they may have hired all their clones, that's dangerous. Now they hire everyone who is the exact opposite Kolbe of who they are, and they get frustrated when they go to a conference or go to coach, come back with all these ideas, get very excited, and you've got everyone who is more stabilizing in the 1 through 3 in Kolbe kind of pushing back. So there really is this magic to using assessments successfully in hiring. And in the Kolbe case, you have to first look at what the role is, but you also need to look at the team too. And yeah, use it in a way that's objective for you, and don't go too far, everybody.
Can I just add 2 seconds on that one? Because I think that's a big danger. And it's actually the subject of my next book, which I need to get my butt going on. But I call it the teamwork triad. And it's really, if you're the visionary, if you're the make it up person, right? And often that will have some quick start associated with it. And then you have a team of, so it's make it up, make it real, make it recur. Okay. That's kind of the model. And the make it real people are really interesting. And at least with the people that I profile, because of course I profile everyone, it's often a mediator profile. It's someone who has the fact finder follow through to put meat on the bones, flesh on the idea, make sure it walks and talks for you, pump the electricity through. And it's like, will this idea work? They'll help you flesh it out. And then, they have to be able to let go at this point, which is not always easy. Then they pass it to the people who make it recur. So those are the ones that are more stabilizing. In the idea phase, this idea has $0. In the make it real phase, it has revenue. It isn't until you get to the recur point that it actually has profit because they strip out the inconsistencies. They make sure that you're not changing things every single time. So for example, one of the programs I created at Coach was the Strategic Assistant Program. Now it's awesome. It's a Zoom program. It's fabulous. Well, if I'm coaching it, I'm changing it every single time to make it more interesting for me. Right. 3295, keeping it this consistent is actually not one of my things. Is that efficient? Is that practical? No, it is not. So I can't keep reinventing that thing. I need to go invent something new, right? So I would mess it up because I need to be in the make it up part, not the make it recur part. I'm very clear. I keep my hands out of stuff because I will make it less profitable and more expensive by doing that. But those people in the middle that make it real are precious. They are useful. They bridge the gap, and it prevents that issue where you've got new ideas and everyone's like, as Dan says, it goes, if they've got a list of 20, it's number 21. A make it real person is like, oh, a new idea, it goes to the top of their list. And that's who you want to be playing your sandbox. Right. So anyway, just a little solution to that particular problem that I find, and I call it the teamwork triad.
Yes. Oh, I'm excited for that book because it does give you an understanding how everyone has a role to play. It's just you have to be in that right time frame or, part of the project where you can do what you do best. It really is that magic of the teamwork along the way. Okay, I love that. Any comments about getting certifications or using consultants before we move on to a little bit more about your strengths? Because you've been to a lot of different trainings. And so talk about getting a certification or not in an assessment, DIY kinds of stuff versus using a consultant to come into your company to do assessments. What's your recommendation?
It's really interesting because I am certified in a lot of things and I am brought in as a consultant. So I actually have both sides as I think about it. Dan and Babs have a very interesting, and mostly Babs to give her credit, interesting take. At any one point in time, roughly, it might be 70 to 80% of our team is certified in Kolbe.
That's right.
Like, that's highly unusual. I think your recommendation is a few people. Now, certainly all of our front-facing, our program advisors, our membership advisors, we are all certified and we keep up those certifications. So just distributing this knowledge across the company means that it's not just relying on a few people. So if you want to actually have this way of talking, because that's what it ends up being, and people to understand it, invest in it. So certify your people who actually are great at working with other people. That's the good investment, is because they'll take it and distribute it. So that's one. Please bring in consultants. I know when we've done that, it means the knowledge is distributed much more equitably. We all hear the same thing at the same time. We have someone who's an expert and can answer those hard questions. The DIY, at least get yourself certified if you're going to do that. Don't think just because you've read one profile, yours, that you understand all of the different dimensions. That's just subject to danger. So when people just get their results and think they know everything, which is not most people, let's be clear. That's not great yet. At least get yourself certified, a couple other key people in your company, make that investment. It pays off in just understanding how to put teams together better. You'll be more efficient and more profitable. That's not a bad thing. So that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your point is bring in an expert. If you're not going to get someone certified, a lot of organizations do not need a fully certified person in an assessment. But if you're not going to do that, bring in a consultant. They have the magic, they have the examples and the experience, and it's someone who's going to be objective at presenting the results to your team. So even if it's an hour webinar or something, I really think there's huge value in that.
There's one other point to that, Amy, is that when you're bringing in, first of all, it's an investment in the team. They feel cared about because you are willing to pay money to help them get better. You'll get a great return on that just alone. Also, people are going to believe it better and more from an outside expert. They just have more credibility. So you get the payoff from that too.
It's kind of a no-brainer. I start a lot of team sessions with people and say, congratulations, you work for an organization that cares so much about you that they are willing to invest time, especially for us all to sit together and discover your strengths and share with others. And that's a fabulous commitment. So, okay, let's talk about you and your strengths just a little bit. I want to hear any insights that you took. I know it was a very long time ago when you originally took your Kolbe Index. What was that experience like? And just kind of how does that guide where you are now?
It still stands out. And it would have been 1994, I believe, that I first did the assessment, which is a long time ago. I don't know if anyone else had this, but growing up in my early 20s, because I joined Coach when I was 26, long time ago, is that I'm like, how am I going to make a living? And with the 3295 profile, I connect in the moment. There's not a ton of planning. There's not a ton of fact-finding research, which so many professions require. Finally, Coach and I found each other, thank goodness. And I ended up doing sales. Also didn't know what I was doing for the first while, but finally figured it out. Right. And when I got my Kolbe MO results, it was like, oh, this explains me to me. It explains how I show up, explains why I do things last minute successfully. So anyway, I was doing sales for a long time, successful, but I was excellent, not unique. I thought my brain was going to rust. Went back to school, came up with the idea for a workshop for team members of our clients because apparently they needed it. And I remember going up to present in a class, and I'm surrounded by HR people. Now, if you meet our HR professional, they're organized. They had their presentations already printed on foam board. Like, they had easels, they had handouts. What did I have? Nothing, right? And so I bumped. It was actually a client who was a teacher, the professor. And I walked, and so finally she goes, okay, Shannon, it's your turn. And I'm swearing to myself, like, oh, blank, oh, blank, oh, blank, as I'm walking to the front of the room going, how am I going to present this to this team? And I turned around, I said, you're all entrepreneurs making over $100,000 a year. And I proceeded to sell them the Team Tools program, which is actually a thing, just so we know. And that's when I realized I could really rely on my quick start. It was brilliant. And that gave me the confidence to coach. It's this thing I needed to be confident about coaching, about getting out of sales. I wanted to do what Dan did with a different audience. And so without Kolbe, I don't know how the hell I would have pulled any of this off. My entire career, the foundation of it is confidence in how I do what I do. So it was profound, and in a good way, not a blaming way. Some of the profiles are negative. This is like, oh my gosh, you're perfect. I was like, oh, thank goodness. Now, it doesn't mean we don't need help with certain things, but it's so transformational because it was so validating, if that makes sense. Anyway, I could go on for days, but that is
an example of you in walking up. I could just feel that, by the way. So I'm walking up to the front of the classroom, but you're looking around, and here's what we all do. We look around, and there's people with fancy poster boards, and they've got all this prepped, and that's not my strength. Those are not the things I do naturally, and you're able to let go of those. You will continue to look around at the way everybody else is getting things done, and either waste a lot of time on things that don't work for you or have some level of guilt. And so that example, I can just feel it. I can be in it and think about how you found that all of a sudden you were realizing, no, I get really good results when I do this. I'm not going to change this about myself.
No, and it's funny because one of the pieces of feedback, I think I got an A- on the course, which I told Babs, and then she said, great, let's do it. And I'm like, oh, Lordy, what have I got myself into? The whole team, strategic coach team programs are the result of a school project. Great byproduct. And I got so busy coaching that I didn't have time to finish the certificate program. I mean, I already had my BA, but I didn't, which was fun. But the one piece of feedback, which I thought was hysterical, they go, would have been nice to have handouts. I was like, yeah, no kidding.
But that's where you need your team members, right? With the handouts. Oh my gosh. Well, and the actual class that you created, of course, I got to benefit from. So I love that. All right. So Shannon, tell us, what are you focused on right now at Coach? And by the way, let me mention to everyone, I mentioned early on that a book that you wrote, the Team Success Handbook, if you have it. Yeah, for those of you that are watching, show them how big it is, Shannon. It is a book that everybody, you can crank through this. We give the Team Success Handbook to every new employee at Kolbe Corp. I find it so helpful to understand what are the mindsets when you're going to work in an entrepreneurial firm, what are the mindsets that you need to be an excellent team member? And so I so appreciate that you've put that together. What are you working on right now and what's happening at Coach?
Well, it's really exciting what Coach is up to and where we're going and what our clients are up to. Oh my gosh, we have the best clients. You have great clients too, but I really love our clients. So I have the Team Success Handbook, and then I have Multiplication by Subtraction, which is how to gracefully let go of wrong fit team members, but not before you try them. Make sure that all the three parts of the mind line up. That's a huge part of the book. So the next book is the Teamwork Triad. And last year I was really focused on some marketing projects. This year I'm freed up from that. So I am desperate to get back to my own creative ideas and outlets because I realize that's a huge part of the value I create, but also the satisfaction I get. So new things is really my focus. So I love doing podcasts. I love having conversations. Actually, one of the things someone asked, oh, do you want to talk on this topic, something about teamwork? I'm like, yes. And how to integrate profiles together is something else I'm very keen on, if that's of interest to you. Synergy of those is key. Teamwork Triad book. I'm doing collaboration starting on Monday on a book about assistance with Stephen Nooner and Ryan Casson and Carrie Oberbrunner from Igniting Souls. So I'm very excited about that. So getting more of my brain out and into various channels that are useful for people is number one, my focus. So I'm very excited about that. And using my invention discernment, my 9 quick start, all the things, maximizer strategic, to just get those ideas out there so that teamwork can be better. Unique ability teamwork and people working better together is my passion. And I know I've got more to contribute. So that really, this year is what I'm on fire about.
That is fabulous. And I'm glad you're mentioning all these tools that if you're not in the strategic coach program, everyone, you can take advantage, especially of these fabulous books. I know that Dan Sullivan wrote a book, Who Not How, in the last few years. That has been a real game changer for me. Thank you. Yeah, for showing that. I know you guys have the 3 books, the transformation trilogy. Yeah. Who Not How, every time that I am just stuck and figuring out how am I going to do something? So every time you ask yourself that question, the how, it really is a who. And so many times I think of that book in a given week where I will look and say, no, stop trying to solve this problem. Who is going to help or be able to solve this problem? There are some fabulous foundational principles, everyone, in the coach books. So I highly recommend looking at those. Any others? 10X?
Well, 10X is easier than 2X. And I don't have the gap in the game, but that's the other one. And the gap in the gain is key. And it ties into Who Not How a lot. First of all, if you want a 10X, you're not going to do it by doing anything you're incompetent, competent, or maybe even excellent at. Unique ability is exponential. It's 10X. Excellent is 2X. It's incremental, right? So that's super important. The gap is, and the gain is interesting. It's how you measure yourself. Do you measure yourself against your ideal, or do you turn around and look where you came from, which is incredible? So that's the gain. And I think a lot of people, especially with regard to Who Not How or procrastinations, you talked about the rest of it, they're just in the gap about themselves all the time. And why profiles are so useful is like, oh, I don't have mental energy for this, or I don't have emotional energy for this. I don't have intellectual energy for this. Maybe that's why you're not doing it. It just allows for a lot of grace and for people to go, oh, but I am really winning and succeeding over here. What can I do more of in this direction? So the gap and the gain is such a profound shift from beating yourself up, which everyone does, into really living into the gain, leading from the gain, because most people don't do that, and coaching from the gain. And then, of course, Who Not How is just a whole other way to look at, delegation looks like work for most people, but if you want to do something new and have big goals and you go in the how, but that just like you'd be doing it already. If it was your thing and you think about who, you're like, oh, that is such a great, not shortcut, but just such a better, easier way to do it. And you still get to be the best who that you are. Because sometimes you're the who for certain activities, but not for a lot of others. So it really puts just a nice 3-word description of unique ability teamwork. Love it.
Oh, that's great. Oh, thank you for that. Okay, as we're wrapping up, when you think about the topic that we've had today with using assessment successfully, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to mention?
Oh my goodness. No, I think I just want to say, don't be scared of profiles. They're not straitjackets. They give language, and language is how we figure stuff out. So if you don't have the words for something, it can be hard to determine the next steps and to take action. And the profiles help you know yourself better, help the other person know themselves, help you to understand them and them to understand themselves. And then you can align towards that goal that you really are passionate about. It's a set of tools. It is nothing more and nothing less than tools. And tools are frankly how human beings have got where we are. So take advantage would be my final message.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And we started with the know thyself kind of the thought process is the more you can really understand yourself, back to the self-managing part. So why not? Extra information is really helpful as long as we are not falling into the pitfalls we had talked about earlier too with, slapping a label on people, using as a cop-out, putting people in a box, those kinds of things. If you can focus on strengths, so we talk a lot about, strengths-based cultures require some level of knowledge and clarity in what we have there. And only then can people start making more effective decisions and managing their energy better to get more done. You get a whole group of people that love what they're doing. And that's why I really appreciate the explanation of unique ability. A whole unique ability team and company, you can't stop them. That's when you've got the foundation for really hitting all of your goals.
Yeah, a strengths-based culture who is cognizant and aware and has language around their strengths will outpace, out-profit the other company. People also stay. I mean, it's a brilliant retention strategy, just saying, which right now is really important.
Okay. So Shannon, where can people go to learn more about strategic coach tools or what you're doing? Please mention your podcast to us as well.
Strategiccoach.com. I have to tell you, the downloads are awesome. They're free. Impact Filter is one of the best thinking tools. And I think what both you and I use to write books and even to design this podcast, which is really cool. Thank you, Toby. So go to strategiccoach.com. Certainly there's certain qualifications for our program, but if that isn't you yet, we have tons of knowledge products that you've talked about, Amy. Lots of brilliant resources. We're about all things entrepreneurial to expand your success, freedom, and happiness. My podcast is Team Success. And then downloads from my site are at yourteamsuccess.com. So great communication builder exercise, positive focus, the basis for the entrepreneurial attitude exercise, which is the basis for the Team Success Handbook, all sorts of goodies. And also I have a recommended reading list because I'm an avid reader. And it actually is up to date at the moment. So lots of fun resources there if you want to expand. Because again, all things teamwork. This is something we spend most of our waking hours doing. Let's make it great. And then if anyone wants to connect, LinkedIn is a great place to find me.
Okay, thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you again, Shannon Waller. This has been incredibly insightful. What a great conversation. Please, everyone, reach out. The generosity with Strategic Coach with all of the tools is incredible. And the books are just some great resources for managing a growing organization. And then, as always, the best place to start learning about your instincts is make sure you go to Kolbe.com and take the Kolbe A Index if you haven't already, everyone. And see you next time.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Powered by Instinct. If you enjoyed this episode, then follow Powered by Instinct wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or join us online at Kolbe.com/podcast for all the latest episodes.